Good afternoon, everyone. It's my pleasure to be giving this talk on mentoring with my prior mentor, Dr. Sarah O'Brien. As we kind of think about several initiatives and strategic initiatives that were mentioned during the introductory session, I think mentoring came up. And so while this talk will be really focused on somewhat general mentoring and the mentor-mentee relationship, but think of this as a stepping point towards some of the mentoring initiatives that FGWBD will be planning in the years to come. So with that, I'll move on and start the talk. I think in terms of why we're giving this talk, from my vantage point, I feel like I have lived the full arc of mentorship, from being mentored by some amazing mentors to now mentoring others. I'm also involved in launching some initiatives at my institution, UT Southwestern, and I have really become pretty close to this topic and what it means to be a mentor and what it means to be a mentee. But I'll pass this on to Sarah to see if she has any thoughts on this.
Sure. I agree. I think we can look back on the whole spectrum at this point in our careers. And I also think we had shared with each other, we both had some really bad mentoring experiences. We both had some amazing mentoring experiences, and so can speak to both ends. It's also really important for FWGBD, as Ayesha mentioned, we are trying to think about how we can incorporate mentorship into our programming, and look forward to hearing from you about that in our discussion later. And Carrie was bringing up the important point at lunch that it's especially important for us to be great mentors because we're a small community and we need people to keep running these clinics when we're not here anymore. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Ayesha, and we're going to tag team this presentation.
Thank you. So at its core, I think about mentoring relationships as these dynamic, reciprocal relationships between a more experienced individual with a less experienced individual. And I think the key thing to know is that it's bidirectional, and the mentor also reaps benefit almost as much as the mentee does. And for this relationship to work, I think the investment has to come from both ends. But further, I think it's important to realize that they evolve over time. So as I look back a decade, as a young investigator, when I was finding my footing in my new institution, I think Sarah, who was my ASH CRTI mentor, really played a critical role in helping me navigate that transition. And then when I joined UT Southwestern, I actually didn't have any mentors within my immediate division, and Ravi Sarodi, who's sitting here, was my mentor and sort of at the institution level, but not really within my division. And again, both played an important role in helping me navigate my early faculty years. I think there is actually a lot of evidence behind why mentoring matters, and there's evidence for this, and it's actually for the person who's mentored, it can translate to measurable, quantifiable gains in promotion, in career enhancement, and in professional identity. And similarly, mentoring, when done right, takes a lot of time and energy. And unlike the mentee, there aren't any tangible sort of incentives, but mentors still reap a lot of benefits in terms of career satisfaction and fulfillment. There's also this concept of reverse mentoring, where you can learn from your mentee, and that can lead to career and personal rejuvenation. And then there's that concept of generativity, which is really the fulfillment and pleasure you get by shaping the next generation of either physicians or physician scientists. So again, when done right, it can turn out to be a win-win situation for the mentor, the mentee, as well as the organization they serve. So with that, the objectives of our this session would be Sarah covering how to identify your needs, whether that's as a mentee or a mentor. Then I'll talk about some roles and expectations to help optimize or enhance this relationship. We don't always think about that, but actually there is a guidebook for this. And then lastly, Sarah will cover resources and training that's available for mentors and mentees.
Okay, so we're going to ask you to pull out your phones, please. So, and we'll do both mentors and mentees, and the good, the bad, and the ugly. So don't worry, you'll have a chance to put your word. So for this first part, though, what is a word that you think of that makes an excellent mentee? So motivated isn't losing its spot as its first place here. Engaged, curious, open, knowledgeable, enthusiastic, patience. Great. Thank you. So we're going to talk about different types of mentors. So we think about the traditional mentor of that person, you know, during your fellowship that you join their lab, or maybe you're connected to somebody as a junior faculty member and you sit down with them every week and they're kind of overseeing all of the work that you do. But I think it's also important to remember that there are other types of mentors, and it's important for all of these mentors to kind of be in your network. I think Ayesha mentioned before that it seems like a really long time ago now, but Ayesha was my mentee through an ASH research program, and we did meet weekly for years, and it was a really positive relationship. But Ayesha doesn't need that anymore. She's a superstar. She's way past me. I need to meet with her weekly at this point. But we still have a connection with each other. She was offered a really big job at her institution, and she asked to schedule a meeting with me to talk about kind of how she should approach those negotiations and what she should be thinking about. There's also people who are sponsors. Those are those people that are good at putting people's names forward. Like, I don't have time to review that manuscript right now, but I know somebody who hasn't had a chance to review many, so let me, and it looks like an interesting article, so let me offer that to them. Oh, let me think about this person for that committee. Oh, it's May and it's time to nominate people for all of the different American Society of Hematology committees. Who can I think of to put into that nomination portal? Then there's the connector. These are people who know everybody. They have a lot of political and social capital, and they enjoy bringing people together. I remember, I don't see her in the room, but 15 years ago, I asked Russell Ware to introduce me to Andy James at a meeting because I'd been, really excited to meet her. And, obviously that was a really important meeting 15 years ago. It changed my trajectory a lot, but it took that person to be willing to do that for me. And then we also need to keep in mind that mentors do not always have to be cheerleaders. If you have a mentor that's always telling you that everything you're doing is wonderful, they're actually probably not a great mentor. So it's important to always have those people who will tell you how it is or not be afraid to give you straight feedback. And then there's the peer mentor, and that I think is equally as important. Ayesha mentioned the ASH research program that we were linked in together. I'm still on a text thread with the people that I went to that program with as trainees 19 years ago. And we still, it's nice to have those people that when you say your grant was not discussed, you don't have to explain anymore. All of us on that text thread know exactly what that means and how awful that is. So it's great to have those people to cheer you on when things are going well and to lift you up when they're not. And I would say that's also what Ayesha and I have evolved into over the years, our peer mentors. We had a great dinner together in DC in January where we spent the first part gossiping, and complaining about our husbands and stuff. But then we got into an organic conversation about mentoring, actually, because we're both struggling with our busy administrative roles of how to still be excellent mentors and how do you say no when you know you don't have time to be an excellent mentor to somebody. How do you navigate that situation? So when you're thinking about who you want to add to your mentor network, what are some things that you should think about? And there's not going to be one person who fits all of these check boxes. But first, is this a person that you can see yourself becoming one day? Are they someone who's professional, trustworthy, approachable? Do they have integrity? And importantly about approachable, are they available? People can be very busy, especially the higher up they are. So somebody may have all the good intentions in the world, but if they're traveling 3 weeks a year, they're not going to be someone that you can just knock on their office door to ask a quick question. Do their skills, priorities, and expertise line up with your career goals? And getting back to the availability, does this person have a genuine desire to mentor me? Are their mentees doing well? This is super important. I always give this recommendation to fellows when they're thinking about what they want to do for their research years. Don't just have that one meeting with the PI or the potential mentor. You need to also schedule meetings with people who have been their mentee and what was that experience like. Especially in a wet lab environment, it's so important to spend, I always tell them to spend a day in the wet lab. I had a fellow once who was really struggling because the lab he selected, everybody who worked in the lab was from Germany and they spoke German in the lab. So throughout his time there, he just never felt connected to the group. So it's little things like that that are so important that you're not going to get by just that one-on-one meeting. Look them up in PubMed and see, what are their papers looking like? Are they still the first author on all of their papers? Then they probably, haven't made that next leap to making other people first author. Okay, now we'll mentor on poll on mentors. So get out your phone again, and what is a word that comes to mind that makes a successful mentor? Available, yes. So I think available and supportive are big on there. Honest, again, getting back to that straight. I think honest about your work, but also honest about what they are doing in the relationship. Yes, I can read that manuscript, but I'm not going to be able to do it for 2 weeks. Like just being honest about their availability and bandwidth. Encouraging, committed, engaged. Now we're going to flip it a little bit and talk about many of us in the room are also mentors. And I don't think there's ever a part in your career where you're not both of these, right? Even if you're extremely junior, you can still be an amazing peer, an important peer mentor to somebody. And even as you get more senior, you're always coming up against new situations that it's helpful to talk to somebody who's been through that situation before. We mentioned this before, that when somebody's approaching you, you have to really think to yourself about whether you have the bandwidth and the skills. I think, especially in pediatrics, I think this is like you're always supposed to be very nice. It's very hard to say no to people, but saying no is important if you really don't have the bandwidth to do what they're asking. Ayesha made the good point when we were preparing for this, that even if you don't feel like you can be that person's lab mentor or be their weekly person, is there something else? Can you offer them to be a coach? Can you offer that there's a particular, like, can you connect them somewhere? So it doesn't have to be a 100% no, but just what else could you maybe do to impact their career in a positive way? We both agree that you can't always be similar to your mentee, but it certainly helps when you have kind of the same approach in terms of organization and structure and speed of work. But it's also important to make your expectations clear. Don't make the mentee guess that you prefer to have a written agenda prior to every meeting. Don't make them guess that, I will tell people if your work product is not done for that meeting, please cancel the meeting. I don't want to have a meeting with you to talk about why it didn't get done. Let's just meet. We'll meet next week when you have it done. So just not being afraid to have those honest conversations about how you would like it to work. And then also clarity, knowing your role. We talked about the importance of mentorship networks. So knowing that you're not the only mentor in this person's field. And so how are you, what is your role? Making sure you're not overstepping in some area. Or if you really are disagreeing with what somebody else is telling them, I will often suggest that the three of us meet together. Like, oh, it sounds, maybe I don't agree that my mentee should take on 2 additional clinics, but let's sit down together with the section chief, and maybe that can be a way to provide support for them. Okay, I'll switch it back over to Ayesha.
Right. So once you've done the sort of work of what kind of mentor I need, what are my mentoring needs, and you approached a mentor and they agreed to enter into that relationship with you, then I think it's helpful to know from both the angle of the mentor and mentee, what are some of the expectations and what are some of the rules of this game. And again, there is a lot published on this. So I'm not going to cover a lot of the core expectations. I'm just going to cover the 6, and obviously those 6 are the ones that I think are the most important. So from a mentor's perspective, I think knowing your role, are you this person's primary mentor? Are you the coach and they're going to come to you for very specific problems, or the other archetypes that Sarah elaborated upon? And also, again, sometimes you are also the psychotherapist mentor, or you're the best friend mentor. Knowing all of those roles is very important. And then as a mentee, I think realizing that one mentor cannot fulfill all of those roles. So you really need to build a network or have a mentoring committee. And as you work with mentors around you, kind of know and can get an idea of which mentor is best suited for a particular role. And this is very important because I think that one common theme is having lots of mentors or a mentoring network. I think a good mentor should welcome you having additional mentors, and especially as you engage additional mentors. So if there is some sort of a closed-mindedness about that, I think that is a big no-no on the mentor's part. Again, I think Sarah touched upon this. It's good to have chemistry with your mentee as well, and I think if you have the same personality, that is a good thing. But you won't always get that, and it's good to kind of know what this mentor likes and what kind of work ethic and things that they would want you to have. And from a mentee's perspective, I think if you say, if you enter into a relationship, you set expectations, set goals, and you say that you will do that, make sure that you follow through. I think a mentee who delivers consistently and reliably almost always gets the mentor's trust, and they're more likely to sponsor them for activities, especially when their own reputation is on the line. And again, here, knowing that the mentor is there to guide you because they have more experience in perhaps the one certain area or skill sets that you approach them for, but ultimately you are the captain of your ship. You have to be as engaged, but perhaps even more engaged than they are in the relationship. Again, this came up even in that word cloud. I think if, as a mentor, you have agreed to mentor somebody, you should be available for them. And from the mentee's perspective, don't show up without knowing what you're going to discuss or what you're going to talk about. Be prepared and don't be afraid to bring your thoughts into the discussion. The mentor is not always right or may not know what you need or what you're looking for. So be, have an open mind and maybe don't be afraid to speak up your thoughts in those discussions or meetings, or perhaps it's data analysis, or the mentor thinks this is the story for this paper, but you think differently. I think you should be able to do that, because ultimately the mentee-mentor relationship should have a lot of psychological safety. I think, again, the mentor's success, if you have chosen a very successful mentor, it is highly likely that they have a lot on their plate. So I always say a rule of thumb is that maybe your mentor is 3 times busier than you think they are. I think the good ones just make it look very easy. So always keep that in mind. I think this one is, personally, this one is very important to me. I think being honest with your, either whether it's the mentor or the mentee, and it goes back to that psychological safety standpoint. I think if you think about that relationship, you should be able to talk to your mentor and say, am I doing all the right things? Am I at doing the things that you think I should be doing at this career stage? And how can I be a resource? Perhaps your mentor serves more than one role. Is there something in the division or in this institution where I can be more valuable? Should I change this direction? I think we sometimes, as mentees, feel that we don't want to disappoint our mentors, even though deep down we know either the direction is not working, or research is not working, or the clinical area that I'm in isn't working. But the mentor doesn't know, and you kind of keep going, and your passion is not there, so you maybe don't make progress. But I think it's okay to be able to tell the mentor that this is not working. And I can tell you is that from a mentor's perspective, actually it's a relief to know, because you as a mentor are also trying very hard to position them for success. So always be ready to have those honest conversations. And similarly, the mentor should also be very open to honest feedback. I'll just share a personal example. A few years ago, a mentee told me that I'm very intimidating, I demand too much too fast. And those were the exact words. And I think I did not know that about myself. And so I think I then reflected on that and really changed my style a little bit. And I think I do take things a little slowly with mentees. And again, I think if the mentor doesn't know how the mentee feels, usually it doesn't work. So this is where the mentor should also be receptive to your feedback. This is also an important one. I think you should, obviously it depends on the type of mentor, but if you're thinking about the classic mentor, the primary mentor, they should be able to help you sort of time your career in terms of what are the important milestones, whether that's promotion, whether that's writing a career development grant, focus this time on getting preliminary data, then write papers, then go for, fall NIH cycle for X grant or ASH Scholar. They should be able to help you with that because they do have that experience of maybe doing it and learning from the process, so they can help organize you. And again, if somehow your mentor is not doing that, you can be the one driving that conversation and really asking, what should I be doing to set myself up for success? And again, a reminder, because ultimately you are the captain of your ship. They're not. They're there to guide you only. This is another one, I think, after honesty, that I think that is often sort of a little difficult to talk about, which is the relationship boundaries. And this one is very important, especially if your mentor has more than one role. Think about it. Your mentor could be the person that does your performance appraisal at the end of the year, or maybe they are the section chief as well. So I think that is, the more roles a mentor has, I think the greater the risk of blurring the boundaries. So I think as a mentor, if you're in that position, you have to make it very clear. Look, I'm your mentor, but I'm also the section chief, and there are certain things that are going to be confidential, and I won't be able to share you even if you ask me. And there are other flavors to this as well. It could be perhaps a senior male mentor and a woman junior mentee. The places of interaction can be variable. Maybe you interact at work, maybe you travel together, maybe you are in social gatherings at conferences. And so again, some of these things can get blurred, and I think anytime some of these boundaries get blurred, that should be a reason for termination of the relationship. In addition, sometimes the relationship is just not working out, and I think having the ability to have those honest conversations, either from the mentee and say, this is not working out, we entered into this, but maybe I think we don't have to keep doing that. Again, there's a lot of time in mentoring on the mentor's part as well as the mentee. And so maybe you don't have to meet weekly, and you want to say, can we, where I am in my career, maybe I just need less guidance from you now. So it's okay to have those difficult conversations, and knowing when to end the relationship is critical as well. Again, any failed relationship is generally bidirectional. If you're a mentee or a mentor, I think it's wise to do that reflection and think about what role you might have played in that, in failing of a relationship. Okay, so I think very quickly I'll cover what is, for lack of a better way to say it, mentee and mentor malpractice. And again, this is just for mentees in the room to be aware. Some of it is active and some of it is passive. The hijacker mentor is perhaps the worst of all types, because this person they recognize that the mentee is a star, and they just want to take from the mentee without sort of giving back. Again, yes, it's a reciprocal relationship, but traditionally the mentor gives more than the mentee. This type of a mentor will sort of pawn off low yield activities. It's not taking a step back and thinking about the mentee and thinking, what does this person need to progress in their career? So maybe assigning or having them engaged in activities that don't really meaningfully contribute to their career. This is the mentor who actually gets angry at the mentee because the mentee wants to have a mentoring network and talk to and get guidance from others. They don't want to share their mentee. And then in terms of passive malpractice for the mentor, again, successful mentors are going to be busy, but at the same time, an organized one will know this paper, this grant is very important for you. And so this one is too busy to be an effective mentor, and they miss deadline, they sit on products. How many, maybe with a raise of hand, can tell me I've sent a paper to a mentor and it's been 3 weeks and the mentor hasn't even opened the paper or given any feedback or even received, acknowledged the receipt? I see some, I think people are afraid to raise hands but are nodding. And this one is this one is the mentor that wants to avoid conflict at all levels and wouldn't advocate for resources or protected time, just doesn't support the mentee in that way. And then we have the world traveler, and Sarah alluded to that one, who's just never, they're so accomplished and they're always in demand, they speak a lot, they travel a lot, and so they really have limited face-to-face time. Now again, maybe you do need that mentor for whatever reason, so again, you need to have some checks in place about how you're going to interact. And then moving on to the mentee, I think it is one of the mentees is this entitled mentee is who thinks that the mentor owes them. And again, I'll remind, I don't know about all the institutions, but maybe I know of one or two institutions that directly incentivize mentoring or provide protected time. So a lot of the time, mentors are doing it at their own time. So the mentee will send things and expect that they will adhere to their timeline and feels that they owes them and will get angry when that doesn't happen. Again, the boundary breaker is the mentee who blurs lines, and again, I think it's self-explanatory. So this type of a mentee, I think, is resistant to getting feedback, doesn't follow through, and then doesn't believe that it might be their fault. In terms of passive malpractice, this is the mentee who kind of emerges around deadlines or when they need something, doesn't really keep the mentor engaged, makes the mentor figure out things about their career, and usually not prepared. This type of a mentee is who wants too much too fast. Maybe this is your first meeting or this is the first few months, and they want to be the president of the university and wants this mentor to help them get there. And really, there is a mentee who was also a taker who just takes and really doesn't appreciate the relationship or the time or energy the mentor is putting in, and also does not like to mentor others. With that, we'll move on to the last segment of this session that Sarah will cover.
So many of your universities or hospital probably have some type of mentorship program in place. Some do match activities, some have portals where you can put your information in as either a mentor or a mentee. Definitely national societies are another important way. I know that the American Society of Hematology has a mentoring program. The Hemostasis and Thrombosis Research Society is a very robust mentorship program. I looked up, I see that ACOG has a portal for mentorship. I saw that NASPAC, I want to hear more about this. NASPAC does mentorship families, where they're bringing together people from different disciplines. Of course, you can find people that you may not have otherwise had connections with on social media. I think that if, staying after somebody's finished speaking at a meeting is a good opportunity to try to get a little FaceTime and then maybe follow up with an email later. That's another place to connect with people. And then we wanted to mention 2 books as well. The Mentoring Guide is written by 3 academic physicians at University of Michigan, and the Elements of Mentoring is more broad-based in academia, but they're both, there's a lot of literature on the benefits and how to do mentorship right, and both of these are like case-based, but with the foundation in that literature. So thinking about mentorship, I really am anxious to hear your inputs on what you feel is missing in this space when it comes to mentorship, what things FWGBD could do to help in this area. I think we're a bit unique because we have people from different specialties in one organization. And then also, I always say this in mind, visualizing our FWGBD staff, which is super mighty but super small. So knowing that any strategies that we come up with have to be ones that aren't labor intensive. So I guess from there, I'll open the floor up to questions for either Ayesha and I, or comments on what we've had to say.
Michelle.
We probably need a mic up here. So.
I think it's coming to you.
All right. I think you guys made some really excellent points. I just wanted to advocate for that mentoring, basically committee or family, or like to really find different mentors who can serve different roles. Because maybe you don't want the world traveler to be your primary mentor, but they're probably going to be good at connecting you to other people and getting you opportunities. So I think just recognizing that there are different types of mentors, and that you get the right fit for the type of mentoring that you're looking for. Because I do think it's important to have all of those things in those relationships. But just like in other relationships, one person can't necessarily do everything for you. So.
Great presentation. I think there are structures in place currently and lots of refinement that needs to be done within disciplines, right? Of like already established like mentoring needed. My question is like, is there potentially a role for more like cross-discipline type mentoring that's gonna kind of, there's the patriarchy and like the established order of medicine, but also like that idea of like mutually beneficial learning from each other. So like between APPs and nursing and physicians, like we all kind of mentor within our discipline, but I'm curious to know your thoughts if there's potentially a role of kind of breaking some of those walls within mentoring.
Yeah, I think that's a great thought. Recently, our APPs at our institution were telling me about a mentorship program they had just completed, and the thought came to my mind. I didn't even know something like that existed, but what if? Because the reverse mentoring concept was new to me a couple of years ago, where I could mentor my mentor, and so I think along the same path. I think if we think about this interdisciplinary or transdisciplinary mentoring, I don't know if any program exists, but I think that seems like a good idea, because I think there's much to learn on the physician part as well as APPs or nursing. So yeah, I think a great thought, but I don't know, at least at my institution, where it happens. I think it doesn't even happen organically, because we kind of stay within our own silos a little bit.
Is this on? Yeah. It's been my observation, and I could be wrong about this, but I think there are pretty wide swings across the generations in terms of performance expectations from one party to the other. Do you have any thoughts on that? The current generation is different than, say, 2 generations ago.
I remember there was an excellent paper it was in the JAMA family, and it was about this sort of mentoring across generational differences. And I think the mentors of the past are they're more sort of hierarchical, and it had very practical tips, like maybe your mentee wants to text you and you want to be, I don't know, paged, or you want them to go through these different layers of your admins too. But so I think it had talked about those differences, and then it had a very nice table which had very concrete solutions to working with differences. That's a great thought. I need to include that in my future presentation. It's in the JAMA Journal of Families, yeah, from maybe 2 years ago.
Just as an example, when I went into training, my mentor said, I want you to go restrictions. I want to hear all about it in a talk tomorrow morning. And that's different than
Yeah.
today. That's all. That
Yeah.
was my point.
Yeah. I think in today's age that won't fly, and you'll be going to HR. Yeah, yeah. So yeah, yes. Somebody, yes.
Hi.
Oh, Bethany.
I actually, to that point, one thing that I have started thinking about, maybe I could try to incorporate that might help with that, is so my first mentor didn't do exactly that, but had just a little one-off article like in the Hematologist, no big deal if I messed it up, gave it to me and had me write it. And I know that it was a test. Now I know. I didn't know at the time. At the time, it seemed like totally normal. And now I'm like, oh my gosh, if I had done a really bad job at that, my life would be totally different than it is now. But it was so smart, right? And it's almost like a probationary period, right? And I haven't figured out a way to do that incorporate that in like a very kind of organized fashion. And so I wonder if either you or anybody else in the room has specific advice on that, or if that's something that maybe we should start incorporating into resources for mentors and mentees, right?
Yeah. Bethany, I call that the litmus test for potential mentees. I don't think that I think about that for like faculty members, but if there are residents or students that want to work with me, either on an ongoing basis or during the summer, my first task is I give them a question or a topic, and it could be related to what I'm working on, and I tell them I'll provide the resources, but I want you to do a review of something, and then come back and tell me, let's talk about, this is the area I work in. These are the most recent papers, like the seminal papers in this area. And can you come back and tell me the gaps, and let's see if we can craft a project around this gap. If they can't do that, like again, I'm talking about student, residents, maybe even fellows, then I find that if I still have to mentor them, I just know that it will be an uphill task, but you get surprised because they come back and some of them have done an amazing job.
I just had a quick question, so we're talking about how mentors can be demanding, but we should also think from the mentee standpoint, the generation is changing. Work-life balance has become such a big thing, and mentees do not want to spend any extra time, slogging and working beyond what they're already assigned to do. So I think, and work-life balance is real, and one should accommodate, and I think a good mentor should understand the family dynamics, the background, should spend some time to understand where the mentee is coming from so that they can give them some space. So I think it is not only, professionally, academically where you are, but you have to give them some, benefit of doubt with regards to what is happening in their family and personal space.
I think that's a great point. And I think it's easier for women mentors than men. I think we just generally will ask those questions. I think if you flip the coin, it's a little bit hard when it's a male mentor and if they take sort of personal interest. So it's a little bit of a fine line. But I think those that have been doing it and know the art of mentoring can somehow get that information. I think it's also easier for the mentees to divulge or share that information when the mentor is a woman and it's the same size. Yeah.
I think these are important points, and I've definitely had to change my mentorship style in recent years and then decide what is or isn't important to me. So, for example, it is important to me that people come into the office to work. So if your goal is to work from home second and third year of fellowship, then we're not going to be a good fit. So I'm just honest with that up front. And then I used to be someone that, like, to me, an abstract never turning into a manuscript was a crime. And I would carry around great guilt. And now I don't. I just, if it's a paper that's important to me, I have learned to send that difficult email of, we've been doing it or meetings, depending on whether it's a person at my institution or not, but it's happened both ways where I've said, it's important for my career that this paper come out this year, and so moving forward, I'm going to take over and I'm going to be the first author, but I appreciate what you've done and you will be a middle author. That's not easy to do, but Or if it's not that important to me, I've just let it go. But I think that we need to change as well as things change.
Thank you guys for that talk. That was really helpful. One thing about mentees from a different generation is to capitalize on what they do know, which is technology. So even if they don't want to invest the time, they can do a lot of
Canva.
Canva, sure. Canva's a great example. They may not need to invest the same time that we did to create some of the same things, so capitalizing on what they know. My question is about the exploiter, and I think that I actually decline a lot of mentees, especially in regards to research, because I'm so afraid of being an exploiter. I'm so afraid of like starting on this path down a research project and then not getting the statistical support we need, or finding out we need a research coordinator, we don't have it, or their abstract doesn't get like accepted or whatever. That I actually, it prohibits me from taking mentees. Do you guys have a good way or litmus of what projects to do this, or mentees to take on?
I'm thinking. So if I understand the question, you're saying that you have the time and bandwidth, but perhaps maybe not necessarily some skills to mentor them. Is that the question, or you? Or resource? Okay, maybe
I know
you.
what she's getting at. No, this is near and dear to my heart. Somebody may have spent hours of her life reviewing asthma charts in the medical record room as a resident and doesn't have a paper to show for it because at the end the mentor just said like, oh, I don't know who would do the statistics for that. So that's real that happens. I think for me, I always try to have like super low lying fruit. So like for our women's clinic, for example, for the first 10 years, we had just a generic IRB that said we could look in those patients' charts to look at outcomes from our clinic. And so at least like the IRB work is done. And what descriptive project could we do from that? So just trying to always have one or two really easy, low resource intensive projects that somebody could do if it is someone that you really want to work with. Or we have a database in our hospital that's easily accessible and has support. Jen, you want to say something?
Well, I was going to say, I don't know, I can't see who was the person that said that, but one of the things that we have at our institution is, I mean, I'm sure a lot of institutions have it, is that the residents, luckily enough, and the medical students, the school has given them their own statistician, or they have their own statistician that has time allotted on a weekly basis to review projects. And sometimes if I want to do a project that I don't have funding for or don't have the ability to pay for a statistician, I will actually find a medical student, because then I know for a fact they have a statistician that will do this work for us, and then that way I can get that paper or that study done. So it may be, and I didn't know that until I actually was at a meeting and they happened to mention that for the medical students, and I was like, oh my God. And so I think that's something to think about, is to have your resident and your medical student look into what resources they have available, and oftentimes they have way more things available to them than we have available as faculty. And then that gives you the opportunity to make sure that statistician is actually going to be there to be able to review that data.
Now that I understand the question a bit more, I will also share that I think there are, if you're on this path, I think there are certain skills that you should also have as a mentor. It's very similar to like if someone enters a vet lab and the PI must be able to show the students or the mentees like how to do a Western blot. So as I think of those skills for me as a clinical investigator, so yeah, I can design REDCap forms. Like if I don't have the resources, I should be able to help and guide the mentee. Again, that's why time is the most important commodity for me. But I, in the earlier years, developed, how to do a good systematic review and meta-analysis. How if I need to build REDCap forms, I should know how to do that. And so there were some core skills that I think during at least my early K years, as I was learning some of the skills, I learned so that, yes, if I have resources or the institution has it, that's great. But if not, and it comes down to sitting down with that resident or fellow, then I should also be able to do that. Again, that is sometimes possible, sometimes not, it depends. But that's also, I think, as we think about our own journeys, I think there are some essential skills that we should also learn as mentors to be able to impart to mentees.
I have a question about your thoughts when it comes to, a lot of times we think about the mentor-mentee relationship as your career, like the career trajectory of one person. But now in a collaborative environment, I think it's harder to be both a mentee and a mentor, trying to help foster collaboration across disciplines, across institutions, and how best to approach that. Because I think that, I like to think about it that we're in a world of plenty and not a world of scarcity, right? So I want to include as many people and be collaborative as we work towards our career goals. But I think it's hard sometimes as a mentor to help facilitate that if you don't necessarily know the other people on the team.
I think it's if you, so for me, my own research is very much team science based. And I think those are actually also, I think I've learned some skills because there's a lot of conflict and that, especially if your collaborators are also, maybe you're the PI, but your co-Is are PhD scientists and they have labs. So yeah, it's difficult, and I think I've learned how to sort of navigate that. And now what I do if I'm going into maybe a group or a project where I don't know, I think I'd make intentional efforts to get to know them. And sometimes what I do is that I decide nobody else is going to do that. I have to do that. So I might say, okay, let's meet for lunch at faculty club, my treat. And then, because I find that most others will just not do that. And so if that project is very important for me or my mentee, I might take that initial step and try to get to know them. And then one other thing that I did with a recent grant was that I actually did some contracts because we had a lot of authorship conflicts with the prior 5-year project, and I hadn't defined who's going to be, because these are also people who are very well established in their own field, and they're also intellectually contributing even if I'm the PI. So I think now with this sort of next phase, I've done some of those things to make sure that expectations are clear and really trying to get to know them and their personalities. I don't know if that's helpful, but it's sort of a evolving discovery. All right. Any other question? I think one thing that Sarah had asked, I think in this FWGBD group and environment, are there perhaps things, resources, initiatives that you feel, because again, it's a unique group, multi-specialty. Are there very specific things that are relevant to this group that might be helpful for us to think about as we, go on the journey of developing mentoring initiatives?
I know you're about to break into your small groups, so I think that maybe something to think about in there as well. Are there ways that we could get projects moving faster if we had more solid mentorship in place? Is there something we could do with our awards program to help people who are applying for those awards find a mentor if maybe they don't have a natural fit at their institution? So just something for you to please noodle on over the next day that you're here, and you can throw it into the comments when you're doing the evaluation survey at the end of the meeting, or you're always welcome to reach out to me to discuss further. But it's definitely something that's on our minds.
Right. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.